I always knew my father expected me to follow a different path. When I turned 18 in our Dallas, Texas home, he had very specific plans for me: law school, marriage to someone from our social class, children, and a predictable life in the suburbs. The problem was, I had never been a predictable person. "Sarah, you're throwing your life away," he said, when I announced my decision to enlist in the Air Force. We were sitting in the dining room, and Mom was holding her coffee cup with slightly trembling hands. "A woman from our family doesn't belong in the Army." "It's not Army, Dad. It's Air Force," I corrected, trying to keep my voice calm. "And it's my life." He slammed his fist on the table, making the plates rattle. "As long as you live under my roof, you're my responsibility. You're going to study business administration like we planned." "I already signed the papers," I replied, feeling my heart race. "I leave for basic training in 6 weeks." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom started crying softly, and Dad turned red with anger. He stood up slowly, looking at me as if I were a stranger. "If you walk out that door to join the military," his voice was dangerously low, "don't consider yourself my daughter anymore. And on the day you decide to get married, don't expect me to be there to walk you down the aisle. I will never do that." His words hit me like a punch in the stomach, but I couldn't back down. There was something inside me that needed to serve my country, that needed to be more than just the perfect daughter of a wealthy Texas family. "Okay," I managed to say, even with my voice choking. "I understand." Mom got up and ran to her room, sobbing. Dad walked out the front door, slamming it hard. I stood there alone, looking at the table where we had shared thousands of family meals, knowing this would probably be the last for a long time. That night, I packed my bags in silence. Mom came to help when Dad left for work, crying as she folded my clothes. "He'll calm down," she whispered. "You know how stubborn your father is." "No, Mom. This time is different," I replied, packing the few family photos I wanted to take. He made it very clear where we stand. 6 weeks later, I was on the bus that would take me to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. I looked out the window as we moved away from Dallas, watching the city where I grew up get smaller and smaller. There was no one to say goodbye to me at the station. Dad had kept his word, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I felt it in every fiber of my being. The Air Force would be my new family, and I was ready to prove that a woman could fly as high as any man. If your family ever made you choose between their dreams and yours, subscribe, because your journey matters and deserves to be heard. Basic training was the hardest period of my life up to that point. 8 weeks of waking up at 5 in the morning, grueling exercises under the scorching Texas sun, and constant shouting from instructors. But it was also where I discovered what I was really capable of. "Mitchell, faster on those bars," shouted Sergeant Johnson as I struggled to complete my 10th repetition. My muscles screamed in pain, but I wasn't going to give up. Not in front of the 40 recruits training with me. "Yes, sir," I replied, forcing my body to continue. It was there that I met Jake Thompson, a boy from a small Nebraska town who had enlisted to pay for college. He was struggling as much as I was, but always with a smile on his face. "You're tough," he said during a water break. "I've never seen anyone so determined." "I have a lot to prove," I replied, wiping sweat from my face. "To whom?" "To myself." Jake became my best friend during training. He came from a farming family that fully supported his decision, and he often shared with me the letters he received from home. I pretended not to care, but I secretly envied the messages of love and encouragement he received weekly. "Doesn't your family write?" he asked one day, noticing that I never received mail. "Complicated family," was all I could say. Graduation came faster than expected. While other recruits prepared to receive their families, I arranged my uniform alone. Jake noticed my quietness. "They'll come," he said, adjusting my beret. "I'm sure of it." "No, Jake, they won't come. And it's okay." But it wasn't okay. When we marched to the ceremony, I saw hundreds of proud families in the stands. Fathers taking pictures, mothers crying with emotion, siblings shouting names. I instinctively looked for familiar faces, even knowing I wouldn't find them. After the ceremony, while everyone gathered with their families, I stood alone watching. Jake approached with his parents, simple but warm people who hugged me as if I were part of the family. "Sarah, these are my parents, Martha and Bill," Jake said. "Mom, Dad, this is the Sarah I told you about in my letters." Martha hugged me tight. Jake told us how you helped him during training. Thank you so much for taking care of our boy. For a moment, I felt what it would be like to have a family that supported me. Bill gave me a firm handshake and said, "We're proud of you, daughter. What you did here wasn't easy." That night, I called home for the first time in months. Mom answered on the second ring. "Sarah? Sarah, is that you?" "Hi, Mom. I graduated today." She started crying. "Oh, honey, I'm so proud. How was it?" I told her everything. The training, the friends I made, my future plans. She listened to every word as if it were precious. "And Dad?" I finally asked. There was a long pause. "He's still processing everything, Sarah. But he asks about you. Sometimes I catch him looking at your photos." "It's okay, Mom. I understand." "No, it's not okay. But he'll realize that eventually." I hung up the phone knowing I had found something my father could never give me. A chosen family, based on mutual respect and shared goals. The Air Force had become my true home. 2 years after graduation, I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. I had specialized in intelligence operations, work that required absolute precision, and the ability to work under extreme pressure. Every day brought new challenges, and I loved every second of it. "Lieutenant Mitchell, I need you in the briefing room in 5, said Captain Rodriguez, passing by my station. He was our squadron commander, a respected man who had served 3 tours in the Middle East. "Yes, sir," I replied, quickly saving the report I was analyzing. The briefing room was full of officers when I arrived. I recognized most of them. We were a cohesive unit that had worked together for over a year. Major Williams was at the front, with that serious expression that indicated an important mission. "People, we have a situation in Afghanistan that requires our expertise," he began, pointing to the map on the screen. "Intelligence indicates suspicious movement in this region, and we need detailed analysis to support our ground troops." My heart raced. It was exactly the kind of work I had prepared for all these years. Over the next 4 hours, our team worked tirelessly, analyzing satellite data, communication intercepts, and field reports. "Mitchell, your analysis is impeccable," said Major Williams when I presented my findings. "This information could save American lives." I felt a pride I had never experienced before. It wasn't just about me. It was about making a real difference in the world, about protecting people who didn't even know me but trusted our work. That night, I called Jake, who was now stationed in Germany. Our schedules rarely coincided, but we always found time to talk. "Sarah, how are things in the desert?" His voice was as cheerful as always. "I can't give details, but I'm making a difference, Jake. Really making a difference. I always knew you would. Remember when you said you had a lot to prove?" "I remember. Well, I think you've already proven it. To all of us, and especially to yourself." After the call, I thought about his words. I had changed so much since that Dallas girl who left home against her father's will. I was stronger, more confident, more secure about who I was and what I wanted from life. A week later, I received an unexpected call. It was Mom, but her voice sounded strange. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Your father, he saw a news report about the base where you work, about the important work you all do there. And he didn't say anything, but..." "Sarah," he cried. For the first time since you left, I saw him cry. I felt a mixture of emotions: hope, hurt, confusion. "That doesn't change anything, Mom." He was very clear about where we stand. "People can change, dear. Even your stubborn father." "Maybe," was all I could reply. But that night, for the first time in years, I dreamed of home. Not the home I had left, full of tension and impossible expectations, but the home that could exist. A home where a military daughter could be received with pride, where service to country was seen as honor, not shame. It was just a dream, but sometimes dreams are the first step toward real change. 3 years later, I was transferred to Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, much closer to home than I had been in years. The work was even more intense. We supported national security operations directly related to Washington, D.C. It was there that I met Captain David Chen, a fighter pilot who had just returned from a deployment in the Pacific. Our first meeting was during a joint briefing, where our teams needed to coordinate a reconnaissance mission. "Lieutenant Mitchell, correct?" he said, approaching after the meeting. "I heard about your work at Nellis. Impressive." "Thank you, Captain Chen," I replied, trying to maintain a professional tone. But there was something in his dark eyes and genuine smile that made me feel butterflies in my stomach. David, please. And I was thinking, maybe we could discuss the mission details over dinner. Purely professional, of course. I smiled despite myself. Purely professional. Dinner lasted 3 hours. We talked about work for maybe 20 minutes. The rest of the time we discovered we had much more in common than we imagined. David had grown up in a Chinese immigrant family in San Francisco, facing his own family challenges when choosing a military career. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, he said, swirling wine in his glass. When I said I wanted to fly fighters, my father didn't speak to me for 6 months. And now? Now he has a photo of me in uniform in the living room and tells all the neighbors about his pilot's son. David laughed. And your parents? I paused, choosing my words carefully. It's complicated. David didn't press, and I was grateful for that. It was still too painful to talk about my father, about the harsh words he had said years ago. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of military life challenges. David was gentle where my father was harsh, supportive where my father was critical. With him, I felt I could be completely myself. 6 months later, during a weekend in Annapolis, David surprised me with a sunset walk along Chesapeake Bay. "Sarah," he said, stopping suddenly and turning to face me. "These have been the best months of my life." "David, let me finish." He smiled nervously. "I know our life is complicated, with deployments and transfers, but I can't imagine facing all of this without you." He knelt right there on the wooden pier, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Sarah Mitchell, will you marry me?" The ring was simple, but perfect. A solitaire that sparkled under the golden evening light. Tears came to my eyes, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Yes," I whispered, and then louder. "Yes." He slipped the ring on my finger and lifted me off the ground, spinning me as he laughed with relief. In that moment, I was completely happy, but as the initial euphoria faded, a shadow passed through my heart. I remembered my father's words. "On the day you decide to get married, don't expect me to be there to walk you down the aisle." David noticed my mood change. "What's wrong, love?" "My father," I managed to say. When I left home, he said he would never walk me down the aisle." David held me tighter. "Then we'll find someone else to do it. What matters is that we'll be together." But even with all of David's love, the pain of not having my father there on the most important day of my life was almost unbearable. Some wounds, I thought, never completely heal. If you've ever felt the pain of knowing someone you love won't be there for your biggest moments, subscribe, because every story of resilience needs to be shared. The following months were a mixture of joy and melancholy. David and I threw ourselves into wedding planning, but every decision reminded me of who wouldn't be there to share this special moment. "How about this venue?" David asked, showing photos of an elegant ballroom in Georgetown. "It has a view of the Potomac River." "It's beautiful," I replied, flipping through the catalog. "But maybe it's too big. We won't have that many guests." The truth was painful. My list included only military colleagues and a few close friends. From the family side, only Mom had confirmed attendance, and even that in secret. "Sarah, you need to talk to her," David said one night, after seeing me quickly hang up the phone. "Your mother called again? She calls hidden from Dad. She wants to help with preparations, but..." My voice failed. "It's difficult, David. She's torn between us two." Mom had offered to help financially, transferring money from her personal account. She said it was her way of participating, since she couldn't do it openly. "Dear, your father still doesn't know that I know about the wedding," she whispered during one of our secret phone conversations. "But I want you to know I'm very happy for you. David seems like a wonderful man. I wish you could meet him in person, Mom." "Me too, dear. Me too." The most difficult moment came when we needed to decide who would walk me down the aisle. Jake had offered immediately when I told him about the situation. "Sarah, it would be an honor," he said during a video call. He was now stationed in South Korea, but promised to get leave for the wedding. "Your biological family may not understand, but your military family understands perfectly." "Thank you, Jake. It would mean so much to me. And Sarah, your father is an idiot for missing this, but the loss is his, not yours." David also suggested his own father, who had been extremely welcoming to me. "My parents adore you," he said. "Dad would be honored to walk with you." Mr. Chen had treated me like a daughter since our first meeting. When David told him about my family situation, he was genuinely upset. "A daughter who serves her country should be a source of pride, not shame," he said. his English still marked by Chinese accent. "If your father can't see that, we'll see it for him." We decided that Jake would walk me down the aisle. After all, he had been my military family since day one. Mr. Chen would be responsible for giving me away to David, representing the family blessing I so desired. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mom called crying. "Sarah, he knows." My heart stopped. "How?" "He found the bank statements, saw the transfers I made to you." She was sobbing on the other side of the line. "I'm so tired of lying, dear. So tired of choosing between you two." "What did he say?" That you manipulated him to make me choose sides. That you were always manipulative and selfish." Every word was a stab. Even after all these years serving my country, proving my worth repeatedly, to him I was still just the rebellious daughter who had disappointed his expectations. "Mom, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding," I managed to say, although the words broke me inside. "No," she replied with a firmness I had never heard before. "No, Sarah. I chose my side a long time ago. I just took too long to have the courage to admit it." "Mom, I'll be at your wedding, dear, with my head held high and proud of the incredible woman you've become. And if your father can't see that, the problem is his, not ours." For the first time in years, I felt I really had a mother fighting for me. The day of my wedding dawned perfect. The sky was crystal blue over the small military chapel we had chosen, and a gentle breeze swayed the trees outside. It was exactly as I had dreamed, except for one glaring absence I tried to ignore. "You look beautiful," Mom said, adjusting my veil in the bride's room. Her eyes were full of tears, but there was also a determination in them that I hadn't seen in years. Absolutely radiant. "Thank you for being here, Mom. I know it wasn't easy. A mother's place is beside her daughter on the most important day of her life," she replied, squeezing my hands. "I should have done this years ago." Jake arrived 20 minutes before the ceremony, impeccable in his dress uniform. He had gotten special leave from Korea and flown 16 hours to be there. "Ready, soldier?" he asked with that familiar smile that had reassured me since basic training. "Ready," I replied, although my heart was racing. "Sarah," he said, becoming more serious, "I want you to know it's an honor to walk with you to the altar. You're the bravest person I know." "Jake, you don't need to say anything. Just know that our entire military family is here today. Captain Rodriguez came from Nevada, Major Williams drove from Virginia, even Sergeant Johnson is here." I looked out the window and saw dozens of military uniforms at the church entrance. Colleagues from different bases, different times in my career, all had found a way to be there. My heart filled with an emotion I couldn't name. The music began, and Mom gave me one last hug before going to take her place in the front row. Jake offered me his arm, and we walked toward the altar. The church was full, but it wasn't the kind of crowd I had imagined years ago. There were no distant relatives or family friends. Instead, there were brothers and sisters in arms, people who had chosen to love and support me when my own biological family couldn't. David was at the altar, stunning in his uniform, with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk toward him. His parents were in the front row on the other side. Mr. Chen waved discreetly when I passed. But it was when we were almost reaching the altar that something unexpected happened. I heard a noise at the church entrance, the heavy wooden door opening with force. Instinctively, I turned. My heart stopped. It was Dad. He was standing at the entrance, wearing his best suit, with red eyes and a face marked by tears. For a moment, the entire church was in absolute silence. Our eyes met across the aisle, and I saw years of regret in his eyes. Jake felt my hesitation and stopped walking. "Sarah," he whispered, "are you okay?" Dad began walking slowly down the side aisle, his steps echoing in the church's silence. Some military guests turned to watch him, but most remained respectfully looking forward. When he got close to us, Jake gently released me and stepped back. Dad approached, his hands trembling slightly. "Sarah," his voice was choked. Can I walk with you the rest of the way?" Tears came instantly to my eyes. Years of hurt, harsh words, nights crying for approval that never came. Everything came to the surface in that moment. "Dad," I managed to whisper, "please, dear, let me fix this. Let me be the father you always deserved." I looked at Jake, who smiled and nodded. I looked at David, who had tears streaming down his face. I looked at Mom, who was smiling wider than I had seen in years. And then I looked at my father. really looked at him, and saw a broken man who had finally understood what really mattered. "Yes," I said, extending my hand to him. "Yes, Dad. If you believe in second chances and the power of love to heal old wounds, subscribe, because some endings are worth waiting for." Dad held my hand with a gentleness I had forgotten he possessed. Together, we walked the last few meters to the altar, where David waited for us with a radiant smile. When we arrived, Dad turned to face me, his hands holding mine. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell," he said, his voice strong enough for the entire church to hear. "You have become a woman I never dreamed was possible, a woman of honor, courage, and integrity. It was my privilege to be your father, even when I was terrible at it." He turned to David. "Captain Chen, I am placing in your hands the greatest treasure of my life. Take good care of her, because she is extraordinary." David shook Dad's hand firmly. "Yes, sir. I promise." Dad kissed my forehead and whispered, "Forgive an old fool, dear. I love you more than words can express." "I love you too, Dad," I replied. And for the first time in years, those words were completely true. The ceremony was perfect. The military chaplain who married us had served in Afghanistan and understood exactly who we were and what our service meant. Our vows were simple but profound, promising to support each other through deployments, transfers, and all the unique challenges of military life. When David kissed me, the entire church exploded in applause. Officers threw their berets in the air, and I heard Jake shout, "Hoorah!" from the back of the church, making everyone laugh. At the reception, Dad approached Jake, who was talking with some military colleagues. "You must be Jake," Dad said, extending his hand. "I heard a lot about you over the years." Jake greeted him respectfully. "Mr. Mitchell, Sarah told me a lot about you too. I'm sure it wasn't good things," Dad said with a sad smile. "But I want to thank you for taking care of my daughter when I didn't know how to do it, for being the family she needed. Sarah didn't need anyone taking care of her, sir. She was always the strongest person I knew. We just had the honor of being beside her." Later, Dad pulled me aside for a private conversation in the venue's garden. "Sarah, I need to explain why it took me so long to get here," he began, looking at the stars. "When you enlisted, I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared you'd get hurt, scared you'd never be my little girl again. Dad, let me finish," he said gently. I turned that fear into anger because it was easier to be mad than admit I was terrified. "And then, when you proved me wrong about everything, my pride wouldn't let me back down." He stopped and looked at me directly. "But 3 months ago, I got a call from the Pentagon. They wanted to confirm information about you for a security clearance promotion." My heart raced. I knew about the background investigation. It was part of the promotion to major I was waiting for. The officer who called told me about your work, about how you saved American lives with your analyses, about the respect you command at every base where you served. Tears began streaming down his face. "Sarah, he said you're considered one of the Air Force's best intelligence officers." Dad, in that moment, I understood I had lost years of the most extraordinary daughter's life in the world because of my own fear and stupid pride, so I started trying to find a way to fix this. "How did you find out about the wedding?" He smiled shyly. "Your mother told me everything. About the secret calls, about how you still asked about me even after everything I did. She said if I missed your wedding, I'd lose you forever. And she was right." We hugged there in the garden, years of hurt and misunderstanding finally beginning to heal. "Can I ask you a question?" he said when we separated. "Of course. Can you forgive me? Really forgive me?" I looked at the man who had raised me, who had loved me the only way he knew how, even when that way was wrong. I saw his flaws, but I also saw his genuine regret and his love. "I already forgave you, Dad. A long time ago. And can I meet my grandchildren when they come?" I laughed through tears. "David and I hope you'll be a very present grandfather." We returned to the party, where David was telling flight stories to a fascinated group of guests. When he saw me, he approached and pulled me to the dance floor. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Chen?" he asked, spinning me around. "Complete," I replied. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." We danced until late, surrounded by our chosen family and our biological family, finally united. Jake gave an emotional toast about military family. Captain Rodriguez told embarrassing stories about me in Nevada, and Mom and Dad danced together for the first time in years. But the moment that struck me most was when I saw Dad talking intensely with Mr. Chen. Two men from completely different cultures, united by love for their children and recognition that they had misjudged the choices we make for love. When the night was ending, Dad approached one last time. "Sarah, there's something I need to say in front of everyone." He asked for the crowd's attention and raised his champagne glass. For years, I thought I knew my daughter. I thought I knew what was best for her, that I understood her limits and potential. His voice was firm and clear. I was completely wrong. The room fell silent. Sarah Chen, is not just my daughter. She is an American hero, an exemplary officer, and one of the bravest people I've ever met. I regret taking so long to realize this, but I'm here today to say I am the proudest father in the world. He raised his glass. To Sarah and David, may you have a life full of adventures, love, and the kind of courage you demonstrate every day serving our country. Everyone toasted, but I could barely lift my glass through the tears. Years of pain had transformed into something beautiful: forgiveness, understanding, and finally, complete acceptance. Later that night, when David and I were in the car heading to our honeymoon, he held my hand. "Did you know he would come?" I had no idea. Part of me had given up completely. "And how do you feel now?" I thought about the question as we watched the city lights pass by the window. How did I feel? Grateful, complete, finally at peace. I feel like the entire journey, military training, years of separation, even the pain, was worth it to get to this moment. I replied, "Sometimes I think we need to get lost to really find ourselves." David brought my hand to his lips and kissed it softly. "And sometimes we need to fight for our own family to discover it was always there, waiting for us." As we drove toward our future together, I thought about all the families we have in life. The family we're born into, the family we choose, and the family we create. They're all important. They all have their place. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, they meet and become one. My father had said he would never walk me down the aisle. He was right, in a way. The proud and stubborn man who said those words years ago could never have done it. But the man who showed up at the church that day, the man who had learned, grown, and found courage to admit his mistakes, that man didn't just walk me down the aisle. He gave me something much more precious, a second chance for our family, and the certainty that true love always finds a way back home.